Well, the Democratic Alliance's new leader, Mmusi Maimane, joins us now from Cape Town. Good evening to you, Mmusi. You're now fully in charge of the DA. What's going to change in the DA with you in charge?
Good evening. This is in many ways a DA that just adopted its values charter over the weekend. That values charter says we want to build a nation that espouses the values of freedom, fairness and opportunity. That's a critical departure. In the next couple of weeks, I'll then be able to launch the vision as we see it for South Africa, to say this is the South Africa we want to see. That South Africa is an inclusive South Africa, a non-racial South Africa, a South Africa where that opens up opportunities for more people. Thirdly is that this is going to be a DA that we coalesce with people who share those values in a non-racial way. We want black, white, Indian and colored South Africans to come on board. We're going to be growing in new key metros that we want to govern in the near future. And then ultimately I want to build a more activist DA, a DA that says we open our doors for you to see what's with us and we want to be able to take our message to more people. So this is going to be a key focus that's going to be coming up in the next number of years for the DA.
Now, Mmusi, of course, the South African audience is watching your political ascendancy as well as the international community. And just last night, many of us saw you on CNN in an interview where you were strapped as the Obama of Soweto. And it seems as if everybody's latched on to this catchphrase. Are you the Obama of Soweto? How do you respond to that?
Well, there's certainly worse things to be called. You could be called the Mugabe of somewhere else. So I think the key trick here is to say to yourself, what do you espouse to do as a political leader? I want to contribute to South Africa. I believe I love this great nation and I want to be able to serve the people of this country in the best way I can. So we're building a political platform that says we're open to everybody and want to take this country forward. So yeah, I've had many different titles. That's not one of them. I've had other ones before, but it's not something that I focus on. I'm proud that I'm from Soweto and I'm proud that we can be seen as a nation, as a leader in this country to take this country forward.
Mmusi, calling you the Obama of Soweto, there's an element of the show business of American politics about it. It's that kind of politics as show business. Let's look at the policy area, economic policy in particular, and the pressure on you as the first black leader of the DA. You really have to come up with views on things like BEE legislation. One of your own members, Herman Mashaba, himself an entrepreneur, very strong words against much of the BEE legislation. Where do you stand on transformation and in particular the BEE legislation?
Look, South Africa comes from a history of so many that have been left out of the economy, and those have been left out have been on the basis of race, and more in particular, these are black South Africans. What we have to do is agree in principle that we need a BEE that will grow the economy rather than split what already is here. Of course, there's a key focus on how do we do redress. It's legislation that says how do we do an inclusive measure for black South Africans who are left out. It's about a focus on entrepreneurial development, and I think the current scorecard as it was focused almost heavily on the ANC's model, on ownership, and what that resulted in is that it benefited a few politically connected ANC members. We're saying we support broad-based black economic empowerment, but it has to be on the basis that we grow the economy, it has to be on the basis that we create entrepreneurial development, it has to be on the basis that what points can you give to people so that they can contribute to society. So if I run a company today, could I be able to say, if I want to see 10 black engineers be included into the economy, why can't I get points for that? So the issue here is not whether or not you support redress. Of course, all of us as South Africans want a society that is built where that those who are left out is not on the basis of race, that we build inclusivity. The key issue here is how you do it. And the ANC's process benefits a few. We have a model that says we want to benefit the majority of South Africans and open up more opportunities. We also can't leave the conversation about redress simply in the economy. We've also got to look at how do we do it in education, how do we do it in other sectors of society.
Mmusi, now one of the very heated debates that have become very common on South Africa's economic landscape oftentimes has to do with the unions, and we know that the ANC has to date had a relationship, good and bad at times, with the unions that the DA does not have. What is your stance on whether there could be a relationship between the DA and some of the unions, and whether this is something that you could even look at?
Look, often in South African body politic, there's this binary relationship between that people often say that if you're pro-business, then you're against labor, and if you're pro-labor, you're against business. What we're saying is here, that is one view to have. It's not the correct view. Our most important thing is to say, of course we want labor rights to be protected. We want unions to understand their role in the business place. What's happened in South Africa is that unions have overreached, so that they want to dictate policy without ever being able to stand for an election. They want to, as is the case sometimes with SATU, to be able to appoint principals in schools. That's an overreaching of the mandate of what unions are. I would like to see, as we've seen here some in the Western Cape, that where you govern, so long as people understand what the role of government is, what the role of business is, and that those three things must always, and labor should always come together to be able to achieve the outcomes. I want the labor relations in this country that don't shrink the levels of people who are employed, but actually allow that more people can be employed in South Africa. I don't want unions that are able to say, let's keep out people. Then the other thing is that we always believe in the right of individuals, and we've always stood up for that. The challenge here is that unions often want to say, if we want to call a strike, they must have the right to be able to command that for everybody. We've asked whether can individuals have the right to vote on whether they want to strike or not. How do we align increases in wage along with productivity? These are critical conversations that I'd like to have with any other union in this country who are willing to say, let's find symbiotic relations so that at the end of the day, the South African agenda wins. So this has got to be a key thing, and I'll be happy to open up the conversation with any union in this country. I think
everyone's waiting for that conversation with the unions to start. It's been very static for a long time. Mmusi, you were reported as saying that maybe we should have a referendum on the death penalty. There's a view that perhaps you were playing with fire here. It's already been ruled unconstitutional. Perhaps an electioneering trick rather than a policy principle.
Look, I mean, on the issue of the death penalty, as I said, I don't support capital punishment. I think that the rights of South Africans are enshrined in that. Or we take the ruling on the death penalty on a ruling of a case that was brought forward by a court that said then the right to life is absolute. Here is a key issue here that I also always wanted to raise, that South Africans have always held different views. They're entitled to be able to discuss it, and so my support of a referendum would come out of that point. But I think the key confusion that's taking place in the last while is that people tend to think if you support a referendum, you also support capital punishment. That's why I needed to clarify up front to say, as I sit here today as leader of the DA, I certainly would not support a referendum because of the impression that it creates. But the Constitution gives provision for these issues.
A final clarification as we let you go. We've run out of time. What is your stance on gay and lesbian rights? There's been a lot of debate about and criticism that you're flip-flopping on this issue. Where do you stand? Should gay and lesbian people have the right to get married?
I've never flip-flopped on this issue. It's one issue I've stood up consistently, whether as a Christian, whether as someone who's been involved anywhere. I've always stood up to say the rights of gay people must be upheld. The Constitution makes it clear, and they're entitled to be able to marry whomever they like. It's the laws of the country, and I certainly support that. I live my life by the Constitution of this country.
Well, that's Mmusi Maimane, who is the new leader of the DA. Thanks for joining us this evening from Cape Town.